Welcome to Dad Hammer, Bolters and Booze, where we discuss all things Warhammer while staying hydrated with an adult beverage. I am the Warboss, and I am joined by the most generic space marine in the Imperium, Mr. Medicae Steve. Steve, how we doing?
Man, so much better than the last time we ventured out. I think I found the med pack, used some stems.
Nice.
Got back
multiple
on track.
stems.
Multiple, yeah, little healing potion, whatever you want to call it, man. But much more on track now.
Yeah, well, that's good because you do a little less work. I mean, what are we here for if not to discuss Warhammer and drink alcohol? I mean, what else is there to do?
Nothing.
That's
important.
The correct. Nothing important. That's right. Well, I'm glad you're doing better, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We have so much to talk about. We are coming off the heels of Warhammerfest in Manchester. Very, very exciting times. Lots of news, lots of hype. So we're going to discuss all things Warhammerfest today. It's going to be a literal fest of Warhammerfest. See what I did there? We're going to talk. We're going to talk about the Leviathan box set that was announced. We're going to talk about the core rules and the book that came with it, the mission deck, all of the things that the models. Oh my goodness, the models that are coming with the Leviathan box set. We'll also discuss some of the Age of Sigmar new models and boxes that are coming up soon. And then finally, Kill Team. We'll talk a little bit about that. And it's getting a little judgy in the Kill Team realm, which is pretty cool, actually. But we'll discuss some Kill Team things. But first, we are going to start, of course, with the most important part of every Dad Hammer podcast, and that is the booze. Steve, what are you drinking? And I've got the delicious cocktail tonight, but I want you to go first. What you drinking?
I'm just drinking an Uncle Nearest bourbon, which we can cover the next time. But it's a local distillery. It's tasty. It's got a very cool, unique history, and it's not very far from where we're broadcasting. So that's pretty awesome.
Local to Nashville, right?
Local to Nashville, yeah.
Yeah.
About 30 miles or so south of Nashville.
You are a bourbon guy. You like the bourbon.
I do like bourbon. I will say, though, it's getting about weather that is going to be out of bourbon season for me.
I don't know if that's the thing. I mean,
okay, good point.
Can't you just put some ice in it and then it's?
Well, you can put ice, and I'm sure we could find some rundowns of some tasty beverages to mix up later.
I like it. Well, I have.
What are you drinking, my friend?
Yeah, I have our Warhammer themed cocktail for this evening, and I'm going to call this one the Inquisitorial Mind Wipe. Yeah, it's gonna be not only themed for Warhammer, but themed for this appropriate episode when we talk about Kill Team later. But really, it is just kind of a doubled up White Russian. It's 2 ounces of vodka, 2 ounces of Kahlua, and you could make it three and three if you wanted to. You wanted just to forget forget everything, and then an ounce of heavy cream, or you can substitute. You know, if you want a non-dairy substitute, you can throw that in there. It won't be as white, I guess, in the glass like a typical White Russian, but it'll probably be a little more caramelly in color because if you're using a non-dairy. But regardless, this is a typical White Russian with some extra in it. So you put that over in a whiskey glass or a rocks glass with ice. You add your vodka, Kahlua, and then you top it with your heavy cream or a substitute. You stir it up, and then, of course, you remove all thoughts of heresy. All of the heresy just goes away, and everything's great. You feel better about yourself.
Well, see if you can be redeemed.
Yeah. Well, this is a good cocktail, and I hope you enjoy your bourbon. Cheers, Steve. Bottoms up.
Cheers, friend.
All right, let's get into the news. And there's a lot of news. This is the news season. This is like an election year, but has no political ramifications whatsoever. It's all pure enjoyment. That's our election.
But it's very
year.
important.
Very extremely important to the well-being of this nation and this planet. Let's talk about Warhammerfest. This is the first in-person Warhammer Fest that's happened since prior to the pandemic. I think it was 2019. Yeah, I was looking that
great
up.
point.
The last in-person Warhammer Fest was 2019. And so a lot of people, I did not get to go. I know you didn't either, but a lot of people were excited to be in person for the first time in years, literal years. So this was a really big deal. A lot of festivities there, and I'm very jealous. One of these times I am going to go. I do want to go. I was telling my wife the other night, and like, hey, you want to make a trip to England? She's like, okay. It's like, because I want to go to Warhammer Fest. She's like, oh.
Let's be honest.
Okay. But yeah, I mean, just looking at the sizzle reels, the videos and the highlights of each day. I mean, we're talking game demos, of course, all the announcements that we're going to get to. They had painting sessions and tutorials, cosplay, Golden Demon, video games, the whole 9 yards. I did want, before we get into the 10th edition reveals, the big news, one of the things I really thought was neat was the painting tutorials. I mean, it was like a classroom setting where you had Nick Baton in the front.
Oh.
Yeah, doing.
I didn't see that. Okay, cool.
Yeah, he was doing painting demos and had a camera zoomed in on what he was doing so people could paint along and watch. And I thought that was really cool that they did something like that. So I got to ask you, Steve, if you maybe one day if we get to go to Warhammer Fest, what would be, outside of just the normal, model reveals and all that kind of stuff, what would you gravitate to immediately? Kind of like when you go into a theme park. What's the first ride you're going to ride?
That's a good one. I would have to look at the Golden Demon stuff. I think that's amazing.
Just the case of models.
I'm sure it might be underwhelming because you know how it is. But I don't know. I think it would look really neat. I think those would be really cool to see.
You think you'd be disappointed, I guess, when you get there and you find like, oh, I could do that.
Oh, I'm not going to go down that road.
I wouldn't either, because I'm looking at, they just announced today the winners, and looking at some of these, man, I mean, it's not just the paint jobs of the Golden Demon. It's the It's the kit bash, the sculpts, and the.
Oh wow, no kidding.
They take a piece of one model or multiple models, and then I don't even know how much some of these things cost to put together, just because they have taken so many pieces out of existing models and crafted their own deal. It is pretty spectacular.
And the dioramas they make.
Yeah. I mean,
just the whole scene.
Yeah, I mean, some of these have the built-in terrain with it, and I'm looking at some of the models here where it looks like they've combined even stuff from the Aeronautica games and added that into scenery here. They got the small scale stuff, and it's just incredible what. And I look at these Golden Demon entries, the winners rather. And I guarantee if I were to look at even some of the entries and then go look at the stuff that I make, it would just kind of be sad.
See, that's why you have to grimdark it up. And then it's just kind of covered in mud and muck.
Yeah, this is the way it's supposed to look.
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
Those are just too pretty.
Well, the Golden Demon stuff is definitely, I think that would be the equivalent of going to a theme park and just looking at the spectacle, right? That's the Golden Demon and all the painted models and the just the setups that they have would definitely be the spectacle. The rest of it, I think the painting tutorials are neat. The cosplay, and I'm not a cosplayer. I'm not someone who dabbles into that, but I remember seeing a video from one of the highlights from one day, and they had guys that were dressed up in Space Marine outfits. There was like 4 or 5 of them walking into this auditorium place.
Yeah, and they make them themselves. That's the craziest part of it.
And I saw they interviewed one of the guys that made it, and he said it took him 9 months to make, and I don't doubt it.
I don't doubt it at all.
Man, I don't even know what they're made out of. But
Yeah,
it
I'm
looks
sure
it looks heavy.
it does look heavy. I bet there's a lot of foam, probably a lot of like 3D printed parts and this and that. But I mean, can you imagine how uncomfortable that really is? That's dedication.
Very sweaty too. I mean, you're gonna go in. You're gonna go into a place where it's already gonna be warm, and I can't imagine. I hope they have some kind of ventilation system in there.
Yeah, I mean it's Warhammer Fest. You're gonna deal with a fair amount of sweat anyway, right?
Yeah.
Just because.
Any kind of convention is gonna have that.
Yeah,
But Warhammer Fest, I think you might want to double up
yeah, it's gonna be elevated.
a little bit. Yeah. So the other thing that shut off all the video games. There's actually a fair amount of Warhammer themed video games. I know Bolt Gun is coming out, which
That looks pretty cool.
scratches that old like Doom, Wolfenstein, retro gamer itch. It does look pretty amazing.
What would be your number one like stop off point first?
I think that depending on the of course, if they were showing off a new edition, I mean that's a little different. It's like going to a video game conference where they're showing demos of the new Nintendo system or new Xbox or something like that. I mean, I would gravitate towards that, but
Right.
I would probably go this year. I would have checked out the demos for sure to try to get in line. I've seen that the queues for that were like 2 or 3 hours long just to play a demo of the game. So I would probably go to the demos. I would actually check out the painting sessions because I know that sounds like more of a classroom type setting, but to me it'd be something I could actually learn from a professional instead of just watching it on YouTube.
Well, it'd be cool to see it as it is, not edited, not kind of spliced together.
Yeah, for sure. Well, let's turn our attention then from all of the festivities of Warhammer Fest into the 10th edition news. And this is always the hype for me. We were texting back and forth with our friend group about what we're expecting, what are they going to talk about with 10th edition. And I know you last time had hoped for a full rules dump.
Yeah, you gotta aim high.
You gotta aim high. Yeah. Didn't get that, but what we did get is the Leviathan box set, and holy moly! I mean, the models in this box set are pretty spectacular. And I mean, what were your original thoughts? I know I have mine. What were your original thoughts when you first saw the Leviathan box?
I thought, well, there's no way. I know we've already seen the models,
Right.
But I was like, okay, it's Space Marines. I get it. Like them, love them. But man, I don't know. They continue to look better and better. But those Tyranids, those are really, really, really well done sculpts. I kind of think they might have outdone themselves on those.
I think so. I mean, to me, it's not to talk down about Space Marines, but they're just more Space Marines. I mean, they're cool. So let's break down first. Let's talk about the Space Marines first. Sure. I think one of my favorite models out of that set, the box set that I saw, has got to be the Librarian. They had already shown that one. Yeah. But it's part of that is the paint job with the glowing runes and all that kind of stuff, and that's something that I can only hope to achieve. But it is a cool looking sculpt, I think. Mm-hmm. It makes a librarian look a little more imposing, I think, because I think the previous librarians, at least the one that I had with the cherub and the book, looked more like like a support character, like the guy at the back of a
weird guy in the cabin,
back over in the corner. Like, hey guys, check this out.
Kids, don't go to that cabin. The weird guy with the book and the stick.
Just super, super weird. And he just didn't seem like be ready for death. He was like, be ready to learn a lesson. So the librarian was probably my favorite, which out of the Space Marines.
Grey Knight.
Yeah, he does.
He looks like he belongs in a Grey Knight army, and that's reasonable. I mean, that's your go-to guy with all the, you know,
That's your psyker,
demons and warp stuff,
which
man.
is no longer in the psychic phase, right? It's in the
True.
shooting phase. I guess that's what they're calling it now. The range
True.
phase, the ranged attack
Yeah.
phase. I guess it's just shooting phase. You're still shooting something. Um,
Correct.
but what was your favorite out of the Space Marine group?
So I like the apothecary just because they're one of my favorite anyway.
Yeah,
But
you're
I
just saying
didn't
that
realize.
because you're on brand with the whole Medicae
Oh,
thing. You gotta
fair
you gotta
enough.
stick together.
Exactly. But I didn't realize until Warhammer Fest that it's not. He's actually more of a scientist. He's a biologist.
Yeah,
So all those little saws and I mean, he's not treating his fellow soldiers. He's cutting up the enemy. And I'm kind of intrigued. Apparently, he's supposed to have some, special rules that he doesn't help heal. He's more of an offensive character, so that's pretty cool.
what was the biologist part? Was that part of the just the Tyranid Xenos theme?
I don't. I mean, I know that there are the biologists, you know, I guess characters in all the lore and stuff in the books. I've never seen it, referred to as a apothecary biologist. I didn't know that Space Marines went around like dissecting Tyranids and orcs and whatever Xenos to figure out your enemy. I guess is their point.
That's what it sounded like
So
with this one. It was more
yeah.
of a scientist type of a thing. Pulling
Hmm.
I guess samples and other parts and pieces from the dead enemy, and then
Right.
using that to infuse Marines or to do something with it. I don't know. I'm interested to know, if they're trying to introduce the whole biologist thing, is that going to
Hmm.
introduce a narrative element where now they're dabbling a little too much with other species, and is that going to turn into
Ooh,
something, larger narratively?
that'd be interesting. Little heresy going on.
Yeah, well, I'm still drinking my Inquisitorial mind wipe, so forget I ever said that.
Well, you'll forget by the end of it anyway.
That's true. In the next 10 minutes.
I do like the dreadnought. That ranged dreadnought. I actually have one of the original metal ones, which is comically small.
Yeah, it's like a
It's
paperweight.
not. It's not. It's like a pair of brass knuckles. I can't believe they let people play with that thing. But no, it's not much bigger than a Primaris Marine, which is kind of hilarious. But I'm painting it up. I'm going to use it because it's cool.
Yeah,
But I like it. I like the las cannon, the missile launcher, and all that.
hmm
I will say in the defense of the Space Marines, I have a bunch of the like we've talked about before. I have a bunch of firstborn stuff, and when you put them together, they're all the same pose. Some of the older models, there's just
yeah,
not a lot of dynamic difference between them. And man, looking at all these like the Stern Guard veterans, I know people are like, well, they've already got that kit and they're just making it Primaris. I've read a bunch of that, but man, every model looks fairly unique. Like even the guys with the flamers, there's the 10 guys.
hmm
They've done such a good job with the poses. They've made them all look fairly unique, so you don't have like twins running around. Like two guys that look exactly the same. And I think that's a big deal. That makes wanting to buy a box of, even though there's a lot of Space Marines and whether or not you want them or not, just the improvements that they've made to the better sculpts. I mean, I think that makes a huge difference.
yeah, and these models are going to be monopose, so they're not the multi-part kits. I saw that these are.
Hmm. Keeps the cost down.
Yeah, it keeps the cost down, which we'll talk about here in a second. Some of the rumors or potential leaks of the price point. Um, but I don't think that's a bad thing, especially for
No, I don't.
the initial box set. It is more Space Marines. It's just more Space Marines, another captain. But I don't mind this. I think you have to come out
Sure.
with with the theme, which is the Space Marines versus the Tyranids, and it really is the art piece, of the two factions. And of course, that animation was just unbelievably great
I know.
that they came out with. So I think that's on brand. That's all good. But let's talk about the to me the one side that came out really literally swinging, and that's the Tyranids.
Oh man,
The models in the Tyranid force. My first take was, oh my gosh, these they look like legit monsters. Like they
yes,
look terrifying, and because before they were just little cockroaches, little bugs, that you want to step on, and oh man, look out for that one. He's a slightly bigger, but the Screamer Killer, which I'm not sure how much I like the name. It seems a little weird, but he's screaming at you and he's going to kill you, so I guess it's appropriate. But man, that model looks, it's one of the best ones. I mean, it looks like an absolute literal monster. They just look cool, and I'm not even a Tyranid player, but as we were talking beforehand, I mean, I guess I'm going to be now.
yeah. I mean, it's hard to turn that down. I mean, just from a painting perspective and just having fun doing something you can, make up your own scheme for or whatever. I mean, they're on point.
Yeah, I mean, it is a horde army. I already play orcs, which is a horde army, and I already have plenty of models. So the Tyranids would be yet another horde army, but man, I can't deny how cool these things look, and part of it is because the paint job is so good. You always get duped into this thinking like, wow, these look so cool. That's exactly how mine's going to look. Not really. It might get close. But looking at this, what's it called? The Neuro Tyrant with the weird brain on it.
I love it.
I mean, it's got a mother brain vibe to it, to me. A mother brain with tentacles and teeth. And
yes,
man, I think it's one of the coolest models in the whole box. But I think what I had read from and actually watched some impressions from other people that were there on site, especially Tyranid players, are just so excited for this because they feel like they're finally getting their real due, and the Tyranids look like an absolute menace.
The original book, Starship Troopers, is one of my favorite books of all time, and Warhammer really dips from that a lot. So does most science fiction in all actuality. Sure. But there's another book out there called Armor. I think the writer's name is John Steakley, but not to belabor it, it's like a little updated version of Starship Troopers. It actually feels more like this, but the main enemy in that book, they just call them ants, right?
Yeah.
And the way they describe them and stuff, and the whole biology and their evolution, and they have a very specific task for each specific kind of creature. It reminds me of that book, and it's one of my favorite books as well. These models just do it. Stuff like that. Every sci-fi trope that had some sort of alien bug type monster that was just terrifying and unstoppable and going to eat your planet. This group of models really, really hit it.
I mean, I think the overall vibe that I get out of this is that they are coming to kill and consume,
Yes.
And I mean, that's their whole MO, but previously it wasn't as threatening, I guess. Just the models looked more creepy crawly, more like bugs, that are just going to get in your way. These seem like I want to go, build a giant wall and bunker myself in a fort, an impregnable fort, because these things are coming to eat me. And they really did a good job. I think these things look terrifying, which in a good way, in all the right ways, they look terrifying. The models are just, of course, part of the overall box. And me being not necessarily a rules lawyer, I do like rules. I like strategy. That's the main reason that I play Warhammer. A lot of people play for the hobby to put together the models, to paint, and that's their whole jam. For me, I paint and assemble so that I can play the game and do the strategy elements. So the rules, which is what I was really looking forward to. The rule book, they showed that off. Of course, it's a limited or a special release for if you buy the Leviathan box set. But one of the things that I thought was most interesting is that they kept referring to the core rules, air quotes, core rules. They had referred to that back in 9th edition, and they talked about the core rules being free. And then when 9th edition launched, the core rules themselves were really just kind of a simplified version of the larger 40K game. You didn't have the terrain rules in there. You didn't have some of the advanced stuff that everybody wants to play. It looks like, just from what I've seen so far, that the core rules are actually complete rules this time.
It's really encouraging because they said the book is like 390 something pages, but 60 pages of it are rules. So, talking about, releasing the rules as a PDF, right?
Oh.
All right. That seems fair. I mean, if you have a 60 pages of a 390 something page book and that's your rules, it seems like they're going to keep to what they advertised. Doing a 60 page PDF is nothing.
Yeah.
And it sounds like the rules are probably not going to be the thing that they necessarily FAQ and change a whole lot like they have in 9th. It feels like they left the space to change in those detachment rules or the
data sheets
themselves.
Yeah.
The core rules are a very dynamic kind of basic thing, and they don't seem like they maybe won't have to change them very much.
I hope not, because that one of the things that I never liked about coming into the hobby initially was just the FAQs and the balanced data slate, where they'd always come out with a new page of rules. And one of our mutual friends, he came over to my house to play a game a few weeks ago, and he pulls out this couple page rule set where the Leagues of Votann had some changes to the rules, and I was like, oh man, I'd forgotten to print that off. And I don't want to turn this into a printing exercise, every single time I want to play, because I got to go print off all of my units and what they can do, because I use Battlescribe. Hopefully they haven't released the app yet, but hopefully the app will do that for me. But having to print that off so I don't have to have the codex or multiple codices running around, plus the rule book. So one of my big takeaways from seeing this rule book was that they showed the core rules, and they keep referring to the core rules being all of the rules. Like that's it. That's so if they're going to make those actually free, then that's really, really cool. And that's something that they could potentially update the PDF if they wanted to. But then they're just rolling in the errata, the FAQs and stuff into those PDFs. So while your book may be negated, I mean, the same thing happens with Dungeons and Dragons, the same type of thing. So I'm encouraged, again, cautiously optimistic, but so far all signs point to the rule book being legit and being something that you can purchase and feel good about. That's not going to be changed 2 weeks later after they find something, because like you said, the complexity is now going into more of the detachments, which they could offset with the codex or additional supplements after that. One of the other things that they announced with the rule book that I thought was interesting is that the Crusade rules, if I'm reading it correctly, the Crusade rules are actually going to be an additional supplement, but they were making that more of a separate part of the rule book, and making the Crusade and maybe some of more of the narrative campaigns, those are the supplements, those are the books that you're going to buy.
And I think that's cool, because as the lore progresses, those books will, bring that in. And the Crusades will be cool, because I feel like what we've looked through in the core book, as far as the Crusade narrative stuff, it feels like they finished the core rule book and then they're like, uh-oh, we forgot to add that.
Right.
Let's put that in real quick
Yeah.
because it's not it's not very intuitive and can be a little hard to follow.
I'm still holding out for the I guess a Warhammer Plus or something in the
Mm-hmm.
app where the rules are updated and made available in there on a consistent basis so that you don't have to keep referring back to something. So I'm encouraged by the rule book. It looks cool. Of course, the covers is cool. It's got the whole Leviathan theme to it.
Yeah, I like it.
Yeah, I do too. So excited about the rule book. Along with the rules, the mission deck was also announced, which is something I'm really glad that they kept in because I'm a big fan of the Tempest of War deck. Where
Yeah.
you know if for those listening, if you haven't played with the Tempest of War deck, it really is a way that you can fold in the secondary objectives. You got your primary objectives, you got your secondary objectives, and I never liked going back into the Codex and looking at all of the secondary objectives, picking those. It's something else that I had to
Makes my eyes crawl.
something else I had to review as part of my pre-game ritual. I had to go pick secondaries and then keep track of those. And the Tempest of War deck just made that so much easier where I just split the deck in half. You give it to half of it to the other player, and then it's just random each round, which I really enjoyed. I think it added an extra element of surprise to the game, even when the battle is in your favor potentially. I liked the fact that there's some randomness to it because in combat there's so much variety and change to it that that's the part of a good general is that it changes and now you have to adapt. So I'm thinking that's what's going to happen with this deck.
Well, I feel like the way the secondary stuff was set up, you had to make your list according to your secondaries that you picked, or vice versa. And I don't know, it feels like when you debrief yourself on your game, right? And you're like, oh, why did I pick that secondary? I should have done that. Which, in retrospect, you can't. I mean, that's sort of, I don't know, that takes the fun out of it.
Yeah.
But when it's random, you're like, well, I had a chance to adapt and be flexible, but I just couldn't get there. It's like you don't feel bad because you picked the secondary and you failed to fulfill the secondary that you picked. You're like, well, that was just luck of the draw. It's literally like the dice rolls.
Yeah, but it comes down to you being able to adapt. Did the squad that you put together for the game that you're playing, is it flexible enough, or did you go so hard into a ranged attack or taking over a corner of the board, or maybe you're overly melee or something like that, and now you've got a mission or a secondary mission goal that says, hey, you got to get to the center of the board and hold the objective for X number of turns or something like that. And to me, I like that kind of variety. Now, I'm sure that in the competitive scene with the tournaments that too much variety causes some problems and you can't accurately prepare for it. But
yeah,
for me, I like the variety just playing at home. I guess I would consider myself a casual gamer, but having this new mission deck with the primary, the secondaries already shown for me. I don't have to look at a book. I just pull out the cards. It tells me exactly what I need. And then they've added a couple of new things to this, which is different from the Tempest of War side, which is they had the fixed versus tactical missions, which you can choose those as your secondaries, and then the fixed would be more of something that you stick with the entire game, which is your standard mission, and then the tactical ones incorporate some of the Tempest of War stuff where you're randomly drawing every single time, and I to me it adds a little the best of both worlds. You get your fixed secondaries for the people that liked to know what the secondary objectives are going to be, and then you have the tactical ones for people like myself, which I like the randomness on every single turn.
Yeah, me too.
And to me, as part of this mission deck, those are really cool things where they've combined the Tempest of War and then the secondaries from the Codex. But the big news out of this mission deck were the Gambits, and that is a very interesting thing. And so from what they've stated at Warhammerfest, those gambits are going to be your literal wild cards where let's say you're down by 10, 20 victory points going into the third round, and you really need to do I guess what we call a Hail Mary, right? You're going to swing for the fences. Whatever you got to do to try to win, these gambits are going to have very difficult objectives to achieve because the victory points that they're awarding, I saw upwards to 30 victory points if you achieve one of the gambits, which, I mean, it sounds absolutely insane, but I don't know what this will do to the tournament scene. But, I mean, I'm reading one now here as the attacker for a gambit. It says, if you select this gambit card, you have chosen not to attempt a gambit. That's one of the cool things that you can actually say, you know what, I'm not going to do this. I'm going to, until the end of the battle, you continue to score victory points from your primary mission. So that's one thing you know, I wouldn't say that's I guess it could be a gambit to say, I'm not going to gamble. Is that a gambit? I don't know.
Well, you can't hold. You got to know when to hold them,
true.
Right?
Yeah. But I guess if you're already winning, you know, you don't need to necessarily do that. But the other gambit for the defender, which is orbital strike coordinates, which is the one they showed off. At the end of your 5th turn, if one or more units from your army that are not battle shocked are wholly within 9 inches of a corner of the battlefield, and those units are not within your own deployment zone, roll 2d6, add 1 to the result, and then that has add 1 to the result for every other corner of the battlefield that has 1 or more units from your army wholly within 9 inches of it. If the final result is 12 or more, this gambit is successfully completed and you score 30 victory points. So that, I mean, if you have multiple units in a corner of the battlefield, and, you know, which is difficult enough, and you roll a 12, then you score 30 victory points. I mean, that's crazy. I mean, so you're gonna put 2 units over in a corner, park them in, and hope you roll a 12.
I mean, you know, how many games have we done, and you get to the turn 3, and you're like, all right, there's no way that mathematically,
game over,
I can win. I mean, you still want to play, and you want to see well, maybe I can just fight my way through and see what happens a little bit, you know, just for fun at that point. But wouldn't it be nice to know, all right, third turn, old rules, no way I can win mathematically.
Right.
But with this, I could, or at least get very close to winning.
Yeah. Well,
I think that's pretty powerful. I mean, I think it's really neat.
Yeah, I think it's definitely powerful. I think as long as the gambits are extremely difficult to achieve, then it won't be overly powerful. I think that's the main thing. So we'll have to see. As a fan of the Tempest of War deck, I'm very much looking forward to the mission deck. And really cool models, Tyranids, Space Marines, the rule book with 392 pages full of rules and lore and art and all kinds of good stuff. The mission deck. I've seen some rumors on the price point, which, you know, at first my original thought was this is got to be $400, $350, something like that. And you pointed out to me, and you threw out a price to me that you had seen leaked on the internet of $245 US. What? I mean,
yeah, I have to apologize to our listeners. I said that, I don't need this box. I doubt I'll buy it. I just want the rules. No, if this price is right, it's a moral imperative to buy this box.
A moral imperative. It's a little extreme, but
no, it is.
Yeah, I salute your commitment. 245. I mean, this rumor comes from, I guess, Games Workshop would give away some of these, and they have to declare the value of the prizes that they give away, and
that's what I read.
The value was $245 US. Man, I mean, typically in the past they've done 40% off. You know, of the, you know, you always get the better value with the box sets, but I did some quick math, and of course then there's all kinds of other videos, and others came out with their predictions. I was looking at maybe $600 worth of stuff in this box if you bought it standalone. But if they put this in 245, which makes sense with the monopose models, I don't know how, if you're going to play 10th edition, meaning you're going to at least need the rule book and the mission deck. Hopefully that's, or at least for me, that's what I would do. I mean, that's only, around $100. So you're paying $145 for the rest of the box, which is insane.
It is. And, I added up, did rough math on just the Marine side, right? And that came to about $250.
Yeah.
For just the Marine stuff. Again, you said they're monopose, so that's, that cuts it back, similar to like the combat patrol boxes that are out now. I will say that did you buy an Indomitus box?
No.
Or did you went down okay.
Yeah, I did.
But it had terrain in it, correct?
I don't remember if the Indomitus box had, because they had the various editions of the starter sets, had the recruit edition and all of that.
The command edition had terrain.
Mm-hmm.
So I was wondering, just say if the Indomitus box, I'd have to look it up and I should have researched it, but say like the Indomitus box had terrain plus all the models that it had in it, which was a lot, in the rule book, etc. And that was what, $199, I think it was like right at $200 for a launch box, for an edition launch box. I mean, I start beginning to think, well, $245 could be a realistic price.
Man,
I think what Octarius was, the Kill Team box, that was right around $200, I think. The odd duck though that's throwing me off is the Heresy box, which it was $300. And I think, and then our boarding action terrain was close to $200 alone. So
yeah.
Oh, I just don't know. It's hard to get. I don't want to get my hopes up, but even at $300, to be honest with you, that's still a pretty good deal.
I mean, the discounts have just gotten better over time with the box sets, and I looked up the Indomitus box, and there was no terrain in it, but you got a pretty good mix of models. I would say it's on par with the Leviathan box, with the primary difference being, of course, it being 10th edition. But I'm looking at it now. You get the book, you get all the models. If they're monopose, I think that would drive the price down even more. And
I think the Marines are like even just the push fit, to be honest. If I think I read that.
Yeah, and if Games Workshop, I think if they would discount the price on this down to $245, to me that means they're really confident in their product. If they think this is going to be the most well-received version of 40K, and they've really hit a home run in terms of rules and trying to make it easier for people to get in, I mean they want people to see the value and get more models on the table. $245 would be in the territory of, I don't want to say impulse buy, because $245 is a lot of money, but for a hobby. But still, if you're a Warhammer veteran and you know the value of these models, $245 is an absolute steal. That's like Black Friday prices at that point.
Oh, it is. And I get a little bit of a kick out of everybody gets bent out of shape about the prices and stuff, and I'm like, man, you never obviously owned a Harley Davidson in your life. Because I did, and the HD stands for hundreds of dollars. I mean, you can't buy anything in that brand that wasn't, ludicrously expensive for what it was. And trust me, Warhammer can't even get close to that kind of price tag.
Well, if it's $245, and I'm sure we'll find out in the next few weeks, but $245, I'll definitely be picking up one.
Absolutely.
I think a lot of people will. So as long as they make enough, that's the kicker. Just make enough.
I read a Facebook page, and I don't know how real it is, that somebody contacted them via Messenger or whatever, and asked about scalpers in that specific issue of low stock or whatever, and they actually got a response. Now this may not be a good response, but they are going to implement some sort of queue system again. I don't think that worked out well once in the past, but I didn't have any experience with it, so I don't know.
Yeah, maybe they learned their lesson this time. I don't know.
But they're thinking about it, apparently.
Mm-hmm.
Man, I think they'll make... Well, I mean, even the Indominus box, they did made to orders. You just had to wait for it.
And I think most people that wanted one got one. So
yeah, and I think it'll be the same this way around.
I'm hopeful.
Me too.
Yeah. So models, rulebook, mission deck, and for $245, I'm definitely in if that's what it is. And we're looking at our release of June 2023. Most likely mid-June, but who knows? I'm just throwing a guess out there. But be exciting to see. Leviathan box set and incoming.
Yeah.
We're both very excited.
Looking forward to it.
All right, so now let's wrap up here in the last segment, and let's talk about the other reveals of Warhammerfest. We spent a lot of time on 10th edition and the Leviathan box, but that wasn't the only thing that was shown off. It was the big one, but it wasn't all. There were some other reveals, and the one that I think gravitated to the most was the Age of Sigmar. That had the most meat to it. To me, it had several models or several new armies that they showed off, and or rather new units within those armies. And they showed off ones for Nurlge. I know that you had your eye on the Harbinger of Decay. That was that.
Very cool model.
I don't know. It's just a messed up looking horse.
Needs antibiotics.
It does. But that was a cool one. The other one that I thought was really neat was the Gloomspite Gets. I am an orc player, but I can't help but just laugh when I see that the Grot model with the squig skull like wrapped around it for a helmet. I mean, who comes up with this stuff? I just think it's so great.
It's brilliant.
I'm not a Gloomspite player. I'm a Skaven player in Age of Sigmar, but I just always look at that, and as an orc player, I think, wow, that's really neat. The other one, the Oryx, not orcs, but Oryx, they had the Ironjawz, and I mean, as a 40k orc player, I like the models, I like the Mad Max theme and all of that, but I can't help but look at the Age of Sigmar Oryx models, and to me, they just look they look so much cooler. I mean, the one that they came out with, this Ironjawz model, where it's like riding I guess some kind of boar. Man, this thing just looked so cool, and I wish that the 40k orcs had this much flair to them. I mean, they do in some regards on some of the vehicles, but just I feel like they just add horns and spikes and all kinds of stuff to the Age of Sigmar orc models. They just make me, wish that the 40k orcs had that kind of flair to them. But I don't know. What do you think?
The Sigmar orcs look meaner than the 40k stuff.
Yeah, maybe more deadly.
They still carry that little bit of that comical stuff,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, still comical, but I agree. I think they're a little more deadly looking than the 40k orcs. Just look more haphazard. Maybe that's the best word for it, but not necessarily a bad thing. I know that's their whole vibe.
No, it works.
Yeah.
I'm just getting into Sigmar, so I'm just kind of like putting the pieces together still.
Right.
As to what is what. So.
Yeah. Well, and then as I'm a, Leagues of Votann player, I'm a big fan of the dwarves in 40k.
Yeah.
But I was originally looking at the Fyreslayers for Age of Sigmar, but the main reason that I went kind of steered away from them was that they had so many infantry models, and then at the Warhammerfest they show off more infantry models. Like if you look at that whole army range, it's nothing but naked dwarves with no shoes running around, and like, man, throw something in there. Throw a a vehicle of a siege weapon of some kind. I know they have the giant lizard drake things, but to me, there's just not enough. I'm gonna get, if I painted that army, I would get so bored. It's just the same thing over and over again.
I know they look like a rabid heavy metal band.
Yeah,
right now.
Yeah, a little bit, and I don't mind the aesthetic. I just would like some more variety.
And they're an entire army, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's okay. That seems weird.
Yeah, it's just a lot of troops. I hope you like painting, naked dwarves a lot, because that's all you're going to be doing.
I mean, they don't have any dudes on horses or anything like that.
I mean, they've got
horses, whatever,
Yeah, they've got some that are on like these fire drakes. That's the whole point of the Fyreslayers. But
okay.
I'm looking it up now. They have the Rune Father on Magma Droth, which is cool, but the rest of the range is all just infantry. And to me, it's a missed opportunity. But it is what it is. I'm sure some people are excited about them. The other reveals that we have are for Kill Team, and first we'll talk about the models here in a second. But first, let's talk real quickly about the general vision and direction for Kill Team. Is Kill Team going to survive now that Boarding Actions is alive and well and received really well? Mm-hmm. I mean, I know you're a Kill Team guy, so what are your thoughts on Kill Team at this point?
I think it still has a solid following. I think there's a lot of people that just love the skirmish game aspect of this part. It is a smaller board, so a lot of people like that, especially game facilities and say stores and stuff, because you could run a whole lot more games on the size board and stuff that you're running a Kill Team game on. Even Boarding Actions is still pretty big footprint, but Kill Team is not. So that's got a big plus for a lot of people. I think the models themselves are a lot of flavor. They're very unique.
Yeah, a lot of variety.
Mm-hmm. I do feel like the rules they're not horrible. I mean, they're not like impossibly difficult, but you can make. I mean, if you played all the rules, it's very complicated. I think my initial want and need for Kill Team was I wanted some faster games.
Yeah,
and I think you and I are on the same page. You're like, all right, I'd like to hang out one night and let's see if we can get 2 or 3 games in. Mm-hmm. And we just never got to that point. I feel like even one game took almost as long as 1,000-point 40K game. So if you're looking for that as an alternative, maybe not the best system to look at right now. I think they came out, with the whole Galadark and Boarding Actions kind of terrain first, which was really awesome. Mm-hmm. But man, I don't know, when they came out with the whole Boarding Actions rules for the 40K stuff, I in my mind, that quickly lapped Kill Team.
Yeah, I mean, that's the entry point now to me. If someone's asking me what I want to get into 40K, but I don't want to jump, both feet into the deep end mm-hmm. and go for a 2,000-point army. I want to start small. And, in the past you would say, okay, we'll just get a 500-point army, pick, do the rule of cool, pick something really neat, pick an army that you really enjoy, and then just go for 500 points. But you still weren't able to really play a game that to the extent that you probably wanted to. You were always left wanting a little bit. And, so then the option was to play Kill Team. You could play more of a skirmish battle and start much smaller, even smaller than 500 points. But even then, I think that you see the grandiose nature of 40K, and you see the terrain and just these huge tables, and it looks so amazing. And then here you are with your squad of 5 to 10, dudes rolling into a small piece of or a small board with some terrain on it, and that's cool. I think it's neat for a limited number of runs, but for me personally, I want that larger war experience. And even with Boarding Actions is a zoomed in version of 40K, but I don't lose anything. If I want to go play boarding actions, then I'm going to get a 500 point squad, and then I'm going to take that 500 point squad and I can roll straight into my 1000 point squad that I am trying to now build. It gives me this like a milestone to hit. So yeah, I'm with you. I enjoy Kill Team. I think it's a fun game. But if my time is limited and I'm going to pick and choose a game, well, I could play a shorter game and still play 40K with boarding actions versus learning an entirely new game.
And I think they're going to possibly crush it even further with this combat patrol mechanic that they're adding in the 10th edition. They're going to, tailor rules for the people who want to only are dipping their toes into it and want to do a 500 point game. And that'll be the entry point. And for some reason, I kind of feel like Kill Team is possibly winding down a little bit right now. I have a feeling that in 2024, that's what, 3 years into this edition, they're going to revamp it again.
Probably.
Or it's going to go kind of niche like Necromunda or something. I think there's a solid hardcore following of people that play Necromunda and Blood Bowl and those kind of games. And I could see Kill Team kind of easing its way, because they were doing a good job, because it was getting people hyped there for a little bit when the Deathcore Creed guys came out in plastic, right? Which that prophecy hasn't really been fulfilled yet as a whole, having a whole regiment of 40K Deathcore Creed guys, unless you wanted to fold them into, they did make the rules where you can fold them into an Astra Militarum army. But I think there's a lot of people were like, oh, whatever comes out in Kill Team is going to be the next 40K faction, and that has not materialized.
No, and much to my chagrin, because the reason I say that, they just showed off at Warhammerfest the Inquisitors, the Inquisitorial squad, and as someone who plays Votan and likes to cast out Judgment, boy, I would love nothing more than a full army full of Inquisitor type guys that just are going into to purge all heresy and walking around with books and scribes and pointing at people and saying, no, you're doing it wrong.
And candles on their back.
Oh yeah. So I mean, this is probably as close as I'm going to get, if you get the Inquisitor, unit, I guess, or Kill Team, as it were. And you go from this into, I guess you could supplement, it's more maybe Astra Militarum, maybe.
You know what I would love in 10th edition if they're not going to make a whole Inquisitor army, make them easily attachable to like Death Watch.
Yeah.
If you wanted to build the Eisenhorn series of books are also some of my favorites, and man, that would fit perfect. Not only thematically, but narratively, lore-wise, it would work super well because they are tight with Death Watch. That's the whole purpose of it. The Ordos, they tap the Death Watch Marines to fill out the heavy hitting combat part. I think that would be pretty cool, especially if you wanted to run Inquisitors. Of course, then you got to start the Death Watch army, and then here we go again.
Yeah, then the cycle repeats itself. I'm looking at the models now, and there's one in particular where he's almost like a AdMech a little bit, and he's got a scroll, a document that he's writing on. I mean, it looks phenomenal. I want a whole army of nothing but scribes that are there to document and tell you how you're playing the game wrong.
And I love the guy with the crazy Wolverine haircut and like the old pirate looking shotgun. You'd have to scroll through and look.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
great.
No, I see it. I see it. I just, absolute insanity on some of these. With this box, this Kill Team box, Ashes of Faith, they really went hard into the demons as well. And this was a more of a narrative box set. And I do like that they're showing some, I guess, some evolution from, starting out as a lowly cultist and then turning into some nasty demon. I think that's a cool narrative element. So we'll have to see how that plays out in the future. But interested to see where Kill Team goes. I think that's always going to have its place, much like like you mentioned, like Necromunda, maybe a cult following, and but we'll see. I think boarding actions is still and the combat patrol along with 10th edition are going to be the main players there, but Kill Team I think will always have its place. Well, that is all of the news. At least, there was tons more news at Warhammerfest, but these are the main bits that caught our eye. I'm sure that we will be seeing more and more from the various 10th edition news bits, especially as they come out with more rules and new models potentially. But I think with the Leviathan box, that kind of whets our appetite for what's to come. So both looking forward to June and the release of 10th edition. But that wraps this year's Warhammer Fest. Lots of great stuff, lots of new models, and my wallet is very sad at this point.
It's squealing right as we speak.
Yep. Well, thank you very much for listening. That wraps our show for today and all things Warhammer Fest. Thank you for listening. Thank you, Medicae Steve, and for this Inquisitorial mind wipe. That is, I can't even remember the name. Right? It's
working.
It's already gone. But I hope you enjoyed. I appreciate your time, Mr. Medicae Steve, and your attention. I am the Warboss, and we'll see you next time on Dad Hammer. Cheers, Steve.
Cheers, David.